Hi guys, so this video is going to be about leading change, and we're going to look at this from a particular framework which I hope you really like. So it looks like my PDF did not get to where I needed to be, but anyways, what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you a little bit about this framework, and I think it's really, really good. So I'm going to give you these slides because obviously this does not make any sense, but what I'd like you to do is to look at this as the key steps in any change process. So in any change process, there's 7 core activities. First of all, do we recognize the need for change? And that's absolutely crucial. This is where a lot of people fall down because we don't realize the people around us are not ready for it. And the reason why they're not ready, they don't recognize it. Not until it's staring them in the face do they actually see the need and start to actually make the change happen. Now, once we recognize it, we then need to figure out how we're going to diagnose it and figure out what kind of way that we want to see the future. And that's going to really help us when we come to planning and then implementing and reviewing this progress. Now, as we do this, we need to actually sort of lead and manage the people issues throughout all of this process. So that should be saying leading and managing people. And as an organization, we need to be constantly learning so that way we can actually sustain the change. And just by sort of going through these 7 core steps, can we have a really efficient and really great change process for the entire organization and its people. So this is a framework that I absolutely love because it has been recognized around the world, and it has helped lots of businesses from very small, so from micro all the way up to very large, massive ecosystem style organizations, and everything from NGOs to those that are high profit making ventures. So let's just go through this really quick. Okay, so when we're thinking about recognizing the starting of the problem, we need to think about some of these questions. So as you're trying to manage the process, and a lot of us here will be doing that, we need to figure out who actually formulates that agenda for change. And actually, should others be involved? So for example, should it actually be you who sets the agenda? Is there the partnership? Should it be a board? And should others be involved? I really think this is really important because if you have too many cooks in the kitchen, nothing will ever get done. And one of the examples I have is even when we tried to do the Leeds University Business School website, we tried to revamp that and we tried to get everyone on board and no one can make a decision. Slightly kind of like Brexit. There's just too many people involved. And no matter which way you want to go, for or against, you just needed to have a decision to be made. And it's really hard if you get too many involved. So who are the right people? Now, notice all of these questions. Do change managers recognize and listen to others? Is it being translated into this desire for change? And we can definitely do this. So these are the kind of things that you really need to ask, and paying much attention to how we build trust and the understanding between us and who are being affected. And really being able to make a diagram and understanding all of the stakeholders will really help you through this process. And so questions that might help you when it comes to diagnosing. So once you've got everybody ready, they're starting the process, let's think about diagnosis. So who'll be responsible for the change work? Now, in this, you want to try and this is where you actually want to get the people involved, but involved in a way that feels really positive. So how can we get people who feel like, yeah, I'm part of this and let's make this happen? And depending on the organization, that can be in many different ways. So make sure you choose what's best for you. Now, notice a lot of this comes from John Hayes' book, and you do have access to this book. So I do recommend that if you want to go through and have this really amazing change framework, then look through all the things that are in this textbook for you. So are leaders willing to accept this new data, or do they just want what defends the status quo? How many times have we been there? Like, you think that people are actually trying to find that data to make a difference when actually they're just trying to justify their jobs. Let's make sure that's not what we're doing. So let's make sure that diagnosis is realistic and it actually has that inspiring vision. So remember to go back to your vision, your values, and your mission for the business, and make sure it's actually motivating others to make the effort for that change. And so As we keep moving forward, so as leaders, we then need to go from diagnosis to planning. So, do we actually have an appropriate strategy for change? Now, one of the things we talk about in business a lot is the push and pull factor. So if you're trying to push something out to people, think about it like even Apple. We're pushing out new technology. If you're going to push something through, unless it's absolutely groundbreaking or it's 100% necessary or what the entire organization wants, not needs, but wants, then you can get away with it. But 9 times out of 10, the push does not work. You want to pull people in. You want to have a strategy that really gets people saying, oh my gosh, I want to be a part of this. How can I be a part? So you're kind of pulling them with you. Or you can have a blend. So depending on what you need in your organization, the push, pull, or a blend is really important. Being clear, and I cannot stress this enough, clarity is so important. Clarity of the vision, the mission, and the values. What we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're going to be doing it, and really getting people on board is really crucial. So if you set up the expectations correctly, this will also help you throughout all of these stages. Now, is sufficient attention being given to people and how they might react to change? So you do have to plan for that. So some risk scenarios. And is it actually sufficient enough to make sure there's long-term implications of any decisions that you're making? Now that's also crucial. Sometimes it's a knee-jerk reaction when we're trying to make some of this change happen. So we need to make sure that we even take the time, especially now, and think about what this means in the future. So let's get into then implementation. You're going to review this. So are you actually communicating things well? And are you setting those realistic goals? And if you are they actually the stakeholders? And again, notice I'm saying all stakeholders, people inside as well as outside your business and a part of this change, are they being managed effectively? So these are some of the things that we can ask ourselves. And we need to really make sure everything is happening in the right time, in the right process. And always, always, always make sure you're getting feedback. That is absolutely important. The more feedback you get, the more you can reiterate, the better your innovation will be as well. So really make sure as you go through the change that you're trying to get as much feedback and the right types of feedback as possible. And so really making sure that you're getting that desired effect. If you're not, why not? Or is that actually what you need? So really being able to ask these questions and get this kind of feedback from the stakeholders is really important. And so as we keep moving through this, so how do we sustain the change? So one of the ways that we talk about this, and if you look at John's book, one of the things you'll see is they talk about the freeze method. So sometimes when you're having a massive change, especially in an organization, you sometimes have to freeze and then unfreeze. And by that, what we're really talking about here is sometimes you have to say, okay, right, we'll do business as usual, but in order to make these new changes happen, we have to make sure that nothing happens new, no new policies, like we're really focusing on this massive change, and that's all we're really focusing on for like the next bit. And we're gonna freeze everything else that we do long enough for that to stick to our culture. And that's what's really important. Once it becomes habitual, and for some organizations, this could take a couple of days, all the way through to a few weeks. And then once it's sticking, you kind of unfreeze, and then that should become a pattern and a habit within the organization, helping you to sustain that change, and then being able to take that forward. And then you can start to do new work, looking at new things and stretching yourself. But sometimes that freeze and unfreeze is really, really important. Okay. So one of the things they talk about, especially in chapters 9 through 13, now this is how crucial it is. So you've got a couple of chapters for just kind of going through these few steps, but you've got dedicated chapters just to this idea of how to lead and manage the people issues. These are huge, and I cannot begin to tell you how important they are. So if you're ever going to read anything of John's book, read chapters 9 through 13. Now, obviously, the whole framework is fantastic, but we need you to make sure that at every point you are being really considerate of the political dynamics and really trying to motivate what we call the constructive behavior. So what you do, what the senior leaders around are doing, if somebody gets away with something once, it's going to start to fester and become part of the culture. So you have to be really, really open to this, and you need to make sure that you are not going against the values and what you're actually telling others to do. And sometimes we need to be reminded of that through critical friends. And critical friends are people who are just outside the situation, who can actually tell you how they see it as a third party. So really, really crucial. We use this a lot in academia. But one of the things you need to do is to make sure that you're communicating, you have trust, you've got the motivation and commitment. So communication needs to be open, trust needs to be very apparent, and then that motivation is so crucial. So if at any point, this will sound really terrible, but if at any point you've got people who, let's say you've got one person who might be a really good worker, but in the end, they do not have your cultural values, they are not promoting trust within the team, and their commitment seems to waver, get them out. This will sound really terrible, but you've got to fire fast and hire slow. We want really good people for as long as we can have them, and as long as they can benefit us and the cause. You have one bad apple, that toxic person, it can bring an entire team down. So you have to be really cautious. And that also is another reason why we need to be cautious of the political dynamics. We could even be causing some of the stressors. So we need to really focus and look at the organization as a whole and how we can work through that. Okay, so questions that might help influence you when it comes to this. So are the leaders actually empathizing with others? Are they reacting and acting to this possible change and in a very positive way? Are they actually promoting trust? Do they actually identify, and then most importantly, crucially, they engage with those individuals or the group who could be affected by the change, and especially those who have success, those who could be absolute linchpins in this? And do they empower others to contribute to the change? And are they supporting those who are threatened by it? So these can sometimes feel like these are enemy number one. They could actually be your biggest champions and the best people to support you. So really, you need to just talk to people, be open, build that trust, find out what's threatening, and 9 times out of 10, you can mitigate that and bring them not just on your side, but again, they will become your champions, which is exactly what you need. If someone who felt threatened before then becomes your champion, you're on to a winner, and people in the organization will follow and see that change. Because remember, as human beings, we are inherently, we do not like change. So we are very hesitant with it. So we need to make sure that we're making it as easy and as accessible as possible. Okay, so what do we mean by a learning organization? So we hear about this a lot, but in change management, we're trying to make sure that we are monitoring the effects of what we do, and we're really capturing that information, we're learning from it, and that's going to help us to guide our future decisions. The more we do that, the better. Now, are we also doing this proactively or reactively? And we're trying to see how we can build this as a proactive attempt to identify any sort of challenges or assumptions in our behavior and how our decisions are produced. And that is what is really, really crucial about this. So we need to be able to allow people to make mistakes, but we need to also learn from them. And as we learn, we need to make sure that we're open. And if one person makes a mistake, everyone learns about it, not to say, oh my God, look, they made a mistake, but to then say, okay, right, so this is a mistake that has happened within our team or our own organization. We need to now learn from this, and no one else will make the same mistake again, which is really, really crucial. Okay, so how can we improve our leader performance? So one of the top leadership sort of attributes that we have, and one of the ways that we can better our way as leaders, is to actually step back and monitor what's going on. So often when I'm talking especially to entrepreneurs and CEOs in the business, but normally entrepreneurs who are especially trying to grow their business, there's a lot of change going on, I try and actually get them to step back. And one of the ways they can do that is to be more of a visionary leader rather than a manager. So what you can do to do this is to delegate more And then this allows you more time, and you're making sure that the people around you and everyone in the organization sees you working hard, but they see you working in a different manner. So what they do is they see you working on the business, not in the business. You're working in the business, you cannot see the woods through the trees. So if you're working on the business and you're kind of stepping back, you're monitoring and you're observing and you're trying to make sure that you're sort of setting people up for success, they're going to love you for it. So that's really, really important. So that's probably one of the things I would say is most important. And I'll give you some other ideas on this slide as well. I do apologize. There's a lot of information on here, but it was so hard to try and wrap this up. But I really want you to think about it in that way. I want you to make sure that as a leader and the leaders in your organization are trying to make sure that they're going to action, and they're going to try to make sure that there's real motivation of others. And we're really trying to bring people with us, that pull rather than push. We don't want to push things on people. We want to pull them, and we want to entice them to come with us. Okay, so what else can you do to improve performance? Be aware of the barriers and make it difficult to basically unlock them. So this is that kind of freeze, unfreeze. So if you've frozen something in, you're trying to make it habitual, people will immediately go, okay, we've done this for 2 weeks. I'm going to go back to the way I used to work. You need to make sure you're monitoring this, and you need to see people in the organization, including yourself, working hard to adopt this new mode of working. And you've got to really sell it. And it might take ages. And by ages, I probably mean a few months, but it will take a while, but you've got to make it the everyday practice. And if you don't, it will never stick. So really, one of the ways you can improve your performance is to make sure this is happening. So as you can see here from what I've written in red, when managing change is viewed as a process, when the events, the decisions, the actions, everything seems to be connected, the leaders are more likely to be able to take action and intervene. That really helps you to break those bad habits and move that change process in the direction that you need to actually make a successful change. Now, this is tried and tested. So what I would like you to do is I want you to try and go through this. Go through the book, even just skim read it, and I want you to try and see what kind of change you need and try to map this against your framework. And how are you going to, as a leader, be able to tackle through these 7 steps? And what is it that you need in order to make this work? And that is your task. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon.